The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday evening, the kind that turns sidewalks into rivers and makes the city feel like it is working against you. Camille didn't have time to wait it out. She had exactly 22 minutes to get from the bus stop on Meridian Avenue to the daycare on 5th Street before Miss Patrice started charging $1 a minute for every minute past 6 o'clock. And Camille had already used most of those extra minutes this month. She had $4 in her wallet, $4 and a collapsed purple umbrella she'd found at the back of a closet 2 winters ago, the kind with one bent rib that made it lean sideways in the wind. She did not hesitate. The man at the corner was standing under the ATM overhang with a rolling suitcase and a phone. He was angling at the sky like it might tell him something. He wore a linen shirt, already translucent with rain. A visitor's lanyard hung around his neck from some conference downtown. He was not from here. That much was plain. She held the umbrella out to him as she walked past. He looked at her like she'd spoken in another language. "Are you sure?" he said. "Take it," she said. "The daycare closes at 6. And she went. She walked the 7 remaining blocks in the rain, her work shoes filling with water, her blazer going dark at the shoulders. She was a cashier at a mid-size insurance company, a front desk position she'd taken 14 months ago after leaving a longer commute and a worse manager behind. The blazer was the nicest thing she owned that wasn't her daughter's Easter dress. She didn't think about it. She thought about 6 o'clock. She didn't know his name. She didn't know that he had watched her walk away until she turned the corner and disappeared into the grey. She didn't know what he would do with that image, or that it would stay with him across 2 continents and 3 time zones, or that he would think about it on a Wednesday morning in a hotel room in Munich and again on the flight back to Atlanta, and that when he landed, he would call his assistant and say he had something to take care of before the board meeting. She had no idea. She was just trying to get to her daughter on time. If you've ever done something kind when you had nothing left to give, you know the particular weight of it. Leave a comment below and let me know if someone's small generosity ever changed your life. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Camille Reese had been a single mother for 3 years and 4 months. Her daughter Zora was 5, born 2 months premature, which meant the first year of her life had been spent with one ear cocked toward the baby monitor, and the second had been spent learning that a child who came early into the world tends to arrive at everything else on her own schedule, unhurried, and then, suddenly, all at once. Zora had not walked until she was 16 months. Then she walked straight into the kitchen cabinet, looked at the bruise on her forehead with a kind of scientific curiosity, and never fell again. Camille had raised her mostly alone. Zora's father had been gone before the pregnancy test was even confirmed, gone in the way some men go, with a careful distance that made itself impossible to argue with. There were no fights, there were no scenes, there was just a Tuesday when he stopped answering texts, and a Friday when she realized he wasn't going to start again. She didn't tell people this story unless they asked, and even then she kept the version short. She was not bitter about it. She had decided early that bitterness was a thing she couldn't afford, the same way she couldn't afford the express train or the name-brand cereal. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a building on Greeley Street that had seen better decades. The super was slow with repairs. The radiator in the bathroom made a sound like a man clearing his throat every night at 11. The upstairs neighbour kept hours that didn't match anyone's daylight. Camille paid $870 a month in rent, a number she had managed by agreeing to keep the unit during the building's 3 years of partial renovation, during which a section of hallway was always obscured by plastic sheeting, and one of the 2 elevators was always broken. She didn't mind the stairs. She minded the time they cost her. She worked the front desk at Brentwood Insurance Group from 8:30 to 5, which meant she caught the 6:42 bus to arrive early enough to brew the coffee and have a cup before the phones lit up. She was good at her job in the way that people are good at things they are slightly overqualified for, pleasantly, efficiently, without complaint. Her manager, a man named Gerald who wore the same rotating selection of 4 ties, thought she was nice. He was not wrong. He also thought she was content, and there he was more uncertain. Camille was not content exactly. She was managing. There is a difference even when the face looks the same. The front desk at Brentwood was positioned in a wide marble lobby that had been designed to impress and now mostly echoed. She answered the phones with the same warm, even voice 8 times an hour. She logged visitors into a system that had not been updated in 4 years, and that crashed without warning on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, which she had eventually just started working around. She filed claims into folders that were color-coded according to a system only 2 people in the building fully understood. And she was one of them, and the other had retired in March. She did not ask for a title change. She did not ask for a raise. She showed up at 8:29 and left at 5:01, and in between those hours she did everything that was asked of her, and quite a few things that weren't. Gerald had once told her she was the backbone of the operation, which was a thing people said to workers they didn't intend to promote. The daycare was $42 a day, which worked out to $210 a week, which was the calculation she carried in her head the way other people carry their coffee orders. She tracked it against her paycheck every second Friday with a kind of quiet precision. She bought groceries on Sundays, cooked enough for the week, packed Zora's lunch in the same blue container every morning, and saved the $2 she might have spent on a bodega sandwich. She was not dramatic about any of this. She simply did it, the way you simply breathe, because stopping was not an option she entertained. The umbrella had been with her through 2 winters. She bought it for $1.50 at the church sale on Halstead. It had the bent rib from the moment she got it, and she had never fixed it because she kept forgetting, and because fixing a $1.50 umbrella felt like a misallocation of limited attention. She knew it leaked on the left side if the wind came from that direction. She knew it anyway. She gave it away without thinking twice. That was the thing about Camille. The kindness was not studied. It did not pass through any calculation. The man was wet and confused, and she had something that could help, and her hands moved before the logic caught up. She arrived at the daycare at 6:03. Miss Patrice, a woman in her late 50s who ran her operation with the warmth of a grandmother and the precision of an air traffic controller, looked at Camille's soaked clothes and soaked shoes, and did not charge the $3 extra. She handed Camille a paper towel from the dispenser on the wall and said, "Lord, child," which was the most tender thing anyone had said to her that week. Zora was sitting on the carpet with a picture book, unperturbed. She looked up when her mother came in, noted the wet with a child's scientific eye, and said, "Did you forget your umbrella?" "I gave it away," Camille said. Zora thought about this. To who? A man who needed it more. Zora nodded as if this were a perfectly adequate explanation, and returned to her book. She was 5. She had already absorbed this logic from somewhere. From her mother, mostly. The man's name was Nathan Osei. He was 43 years old, and he was the founder and chief executive of Osei Logistics, a supply chain consulting firm he had built from a single client and a shared office space over 11 years to a company with offices in 4 cities and revenue that would have seemed fictional to the version of himself who had slept on a cousin's couch in his first year after college. He was in Columbus for a 3-day summit on last-mile delivery infrastructure, the kind of conference he attended 6 or 8 times a year because his presence at them had begun to function as a form of company advertising. He stayed downtown, ate the catered meals, gave the panel remarks, and then left. He had been standing at the corner of Meridian and Leland for 11 minutes when the rain started. His car had been supposed to pick him up at the hotel, but there had been a miscommunication about the pickup location, and he was on the wrong block, and his phone had just enough signal to load the ride-sharing app, but not enough to confirm the revised address, and he had been standing under the ATM overhang, watching the rain increase while the battery dipped toward 12%. He had not been panicked exactly. He was a man who had navigated worse, who had signed a lease on office space before he had the clients to fill it, who had flown to Dubai on a Wednesday with 1 suitcase and no confirmed meeting and come back Thursday with a contract. He was practiced at uncertainty. He was simply on a Tuesday evening in Ohio, wet and mildly inconvenienced and calculating his options. And then the woman came by. She was moving fast, head down, blazer already dark at the collar. She did not slow down. She held the umbrella out sideways as she passed him and said, "Take it." And before he had fully processed the offer, she was already 3 steps past him, head down again, walking hard. He had called out to thank her. She either didn't hear him or didn't have time to stop. He stood under the umbrella and watched her go. She was soaked before she reached the next intersection. She didn't look back. There are moments that stay with people longer than they should by any reasonable measure. Nathan Osei was not a sentimental man. He was precise, data-oriented, allergic to waste in all its forms. He did not believe in the language of signs or the architecture of fate. He believed in actions and their consequences. He believed in people who did things when they could have easily not done them. He thought about her on the drive to the airport. He thought about the way she had moved. like someone who was always slightly behind on a schedule that never gave enough room. He thought about the blazer going wet at the shoulders. He thought about her saying the daycare closes at 6, which meant a child, which meant she was walking those blocks in the rain with a child waiting at the end of them, and she had still stopped to give her umbrella to a stranger. He did not know her name. He did not have a way to find her. He flew to his next stop and then the one after that. He thought about her intermittently, the way you think about something you haven't resolved. He filed it in whatever drawer the brain keeps things it is not done with yet. And on the Wednesday morning in Munich, in the particular quiet of a hotel room before a meeting, he took out his phone and he drafted a note to his assistant in Columbus. Her name was Dara, and she had been with him for 6 years and had learned to pass his more unusual requests without editorial comment. He asked her to look into whatever staffing firms operated near Meridian and Leland and to check if anyone had reported a found umbrella from that intersection. He described the umbrella. Purple. One bent rib, leaning left. He described the woman. Black, early 30s, trim, moving fast, a blazer, clearly on her way to a daycare. He said he didn't expect her to find anything. He said to try anyway. He sat back on the edge of the hotel bed after he sent the message and thought about what he was doing. He was a practical man. He did not chase things that had no address. He had met thousands of people in his professional life and had trained himself long ago to assess them efficiently, to make a quick read and move forward. He was not in the habit of turning a 30-second exchange in the rain into a project. He knew this. He also knew that in 30 seconds she had done something that most people with more time and more resources would not have done. He had watched her walk away and he had felt something shift in the ledger he kept, the one where he tracked what people did when it cost them something. It had not happened often enough that he was willing to simply let it pass. Dara, who had executed stranger requests with a straight face, sent back 3 words. On it, Nathan. She took 3 days. She went to the only daycare within a 6-block radius of that corner, a small operation on 5th Street run by a woman named Patrice, and she told Miss Patrice a version of the story that was true in all its particulars. A man had been helped by a woman on a rainy Tuesday. He wanted to thank her. He would understand entirely if she preferred to be left alone. Before she went to the daycare, Dara had checked with 3 staffing agencies and 2 lost and found databases and a community Facebook group for the neighbourhood, none of which yielded anything. The umbrella had not been reported found. No one had posted about a woman giving one away in the rain. This was not surprising. People did not usually post about the kindnesses they received from strangers because they did not usually know how to describe what had happened to them. She had been about to call it a dead end when she thought about what Nathan had said. Daycare closes at 6. She had pulled up a map of the area and counted the daycares. There was only one in the radius that made any sense with the timing. Miss Patrice was silent on the phone for a moment. She gave away her last umbrella, Miss Patrice said. It was not a question. That's what he said. I know who that is, Miss Patrice said. Camille heard about it on a Thursday morning, while she was at the front desk at Brentwood Insurance Group entering claim data into a spreadsheet that was organised in a way that made no inherent sense and that she had long ago stopped asking about. Miss Patrice called her cell during the brief window between the morning meeting and the first rush of incoming calls. Camille almost let it go to voicemail. She stepped into the hallway instead. She listened to the whole thing twice, the first time because she was not sure she had understood it, and the second time because she was not sure she believed it. A man. He had kept the umbrella. He wanted to thank her. He had sent someone to find her. She stood in the hallway with her phone warm in her hand for a long moment. She called back the number Miss Patrice had given her. Dara answered on the second ring, professional and warm, and explained again what Camille had already heard, only with more detail. Nathan. Osei Logistics. He was in town next week. He would very much like to meet her for coffee. No obligation, no expectation, simply to express his gratitude in person. You can say no, Dara said. He won't take any offence. He just wanted you to know that he's been thinking about what you did. Camille was quiet for a moment. Does he know I didn't have a spare one? The umbrella? Dara paused. He doesn't know that detail. Okay, Camille said. Tell him yes. She did not tell anyone at work. She did not tell her mother, who would have told her aunt, who would have told everyone at the church auxiliary meeting. She told Zora that evening after dinner while she was drying dishes, and Zora was drawing at the kitchen table. She told it the way she told Zora most things, plainly and without inflation. The man from the rain found us, she said. Zora didn't look up from her drawing. The umbrella man? Yes. Did he want to give it back? Not exactly. Zora considered this. Is he nice? I think so. I'm going to find out. Okay, Zora said, and went back to her drawing. She was working on what appeared to be a giraffe with an unusually small head, rendered in blue crayon. She was not worried. Zora, who had come into the world 2 months early and fallen only once, had a fundamental confidence in her mother's judgment that was one of the more quietly astonishing things about her. Camille met him on a Tuesday. He had suggested the coffee shop on Collins, a corner place with big windows and high stools that she sometimes passed on the way to a different bus stop. She arrived 3 minutes early, which was the only way she knew how to arrive anywhere, and he was already there, which told her something. He stood when she came in. He was tall, broader than she remembered from the corner, wearing a dark jacket over a grey shirt. He extended his hand and said, "Ms. Reese, thank you for coming." "Camille," she said. "Please." He smiled. "Nathan." They sat. He ordered coffee and asked if she wanted anything, and she ordered tea because it was $2 cheaper, and then immediately wondered if he had noticed, and then wondered why she cared if he noticed, and then let it go. He was direct. She had suspected he would be from the efficiency of the way he had found her, and she was right. He told her what had happened from his side. The corner, the phone, the rain, the pickup that hadn't come. He told her about watching her walk away. He said it in simple language, not embellished, and there was nothing in his telling that felt like performance. "You were already soaked before you reached the light," he said, "and you never slowed down. You were clearly late to somewhere, and you stopped anyway." She wrapped both hands around her tea mug. "I wasn't sure you'd actually take it. I wasn't sure I should. It was a beat-up umbrella," she said. "Don't make it more than it was." He looked at her steadily. "It was you walking 6 blocks in the rain so a stranger didn't have to." She didn't answer that. He asked about her work in the straightforward way of someone who was interested, and not trying to be subtle about it. She told him about the front desk, about the claims data, about Gerald and his 4 ties. She was matter-of-fact, not self-pitying, and she watched him listen the way she had learned to watch people when something was at stake. He was a good listener. Not in the performative way, not with the elaborate nods and the practiced attention of someone who had learned listening as a tool, but with the quieter kind of attention that comes from someone who has spent years in meetings where the wrong assumption cost money. He did not interrupt. He did not fill the spaces. When she paused, he waited. It was the kind of listening that made you choose your words more carefully, which she did. She told him about the filing system she had rebuilt in her first month, the colour-coded one that no one else understood. She told him she had 3 different tracking spreadsheets she ran outside of the official system because the official system was unreliable. He asked one question about each of these things, short and precise, and she answered each one and then they moved on. He told her about the company. Not the way she imagined executives talked about companies, not with the momentum and the acreage and the deal names, but specifically, he talked about the problem they solved, which was the last mile of delivery logistics, the part that most companies treated as an afterthought, and that turned out to be where nearly 1/3 of costs accumulated. He talked about it like someone who still found it interesting after 11 years, which she noticed. She noticed other things too, that the collar of his shirt was simple and pressed without a crease at the button, that he had ordered only water after the coffee and not made a thing of it, that when his phone buzzed once on the table between them, he turned it face down without looking at it. These were small things. She had learned over the years that small things were usually the reliable ones. Then he said, "I want to offer you something. You're welcome to tell me it's none of my business and we finish our coffee and go our separate ways, and I'll mean it when I say that's fine." She set down the mug. He described a position at the Columbus office operations coordinator. It was a newly created role, expanded because the office was growing, and the person they'd had managing the day-to-day flow of communication and scheduling had left for another city. It required someone with organizational precision, composure under interruption, and the kind of judgment that couldn't be trained in a week. He said the salary range, and Camille kept her face even, which took some effort because the number was 31% higher than what she made at Brentwood Insurance Group and included health coverage that did not require her to choose between the deductible and the electric bill. He slid a card across the table. "There's a formal process. You'd interview with my director of operations and her deputy. I'm not handing you the role. I'm telling you the role exists and that I think you're worth a conversation." She looked at the card for a moment. Why? He didn't hesitate. Because I've hired 47 people in the last 4 years, and the most important thing in every hire is judgment under pressure. When someone is late and tired and has $4 and still makes room for someone else, that's not luck, that's character. I want to know if the rest of your experience matches what I saw on that corner. She picked up the card. You kept track of what I gave you, the $4. You mentioned the daycare, he said. You were counting. I noticed. She nodded once, slowly. I'll be in touch with your director, she said. What's her name? Sandra Achebe. She'll tell you I put you through the same screen as anyone else. She'll mean it. Good, Camille said. She didn't call her mother that night either. She sat at the kitchen table after Zora was in bed, and she looked at the card for a while. She thought about the number he had said. She thought about what 31% would mean for the rent, for the daycare, for the savings account that currently held $912, and that she touched only when the math forced her to. She thought about Zora, who would need different shoes in 6 weeks and who was starting to ask about summer camp the way children start to ask about things they've seen other children have. She turned the card over in her hands. It was a plain card. Heavy stock, dark letters. No design beyond the name and the address and the phone number. There was something trustworthy about that, which she knew was not a sophisticated thing to notice. She had been in one job her whole adult life, or near enough to it. She had not grown up believing that things opened for people like her, not cleanly, not through the front entrance. She had grown up believing that you worked and you were steady and you did not ask for more than the work could give you, because asking was how you ended up with less. She did not know when exactly she had absorbed this. She had been absorbing it all her life, in the way you absorb the temperature of the room you live in, without deciding to and without knowing how to stop. She thought about his face across the table when she told him about the claim system she had rebuilt, the way he had paused, just slightly, and then asked his one precise question. He was a man who recognized the shape of a problem solved. She had seen that before in people, that quality of attention, and she trusted it. She thought about the umbrella, about the moment her hands had moved before the logic could stop them. She interviewed the following Thursday. She took the afternoon off from Brentwood, telling Gerald she had a medical appointment, which was the only lie she told anyone in this whole sequence of events, and which she did not feel particularly bad about. She wore the blazer, now dry. She arrived 4 minutes early. Sandra Achebe was 52, a composed woman with reading glasses on a chain and a reputation, which Camille would come to understand later, for asking exactly one question that no one was ever prepared for. She interviewed Camille for 45 minutes on logistics operations, communication systems, managing competing priorities and handling a director's calendar under pressure. The deputy, a man named Tom, took notes on a legal pad. The office was on the 12th floor, smaller than Camille had expected, with a clean white table and 3 chairs and a window that let in afternoon light at a low angle. She'd spent the week before reading everything publicly available about Osei Logistics, which was not nothing. She had memorized 3 things she thought might come up, and they all did, which meant either she was well prepared or the questions were predictable, and she suspected it was both. Sandra was the kind of interviewer who asked each question once and then waited. She did not rephrase for comfort. She did not make encouraging sounds while Camille spoke. She just listened, in that particular way of people who are deciding rather than performing assessment, and Camille found herself grateful for it, because it meant she did not have to manage the other person's reactions and could simply say the true thing and stop. She was asked about a time she had managed a situation where the official system had failed. She described the colour-coded filing system and the 3 tracking spreadsheets. She was asked how she handled competing demands from multiple senior people. She described the call management protocol she had developed in her 2nd month at Brentwood that had reduced the number of messages Gerald lost from 7 a week to none, without his ever knowing she had done it. Tom wrote something on the legal pad. She was asked how she handled feedback she disagreed with. She said she asked one clarifying question, implemented as directed, and then followed up with data after 30 days if the result bore out her concern. She had done this twice in 14 months. Both times the protocol had been changed to match her recommendation without Gerald's understanding that she had recommended it. Tom looked at Sandra. The question that no one was ever prepared for came at the 38th minute. Sandra looked at her over the reading glasses and said, "Tell me about a time you gave something up that you needed, because someone else needed it more." Camille did not hesitate. "Last month." I gave away the only umbrella I had. I was late to pick up my daughter and it was raining hard. A man was standing on the corner with a dead phone and nowhere to go. Sandra did not write anything on her notepad. She looked at Camille for a moment. And did you get very wet? She said. Yes, Camille said, but the daycare is only 7 blocks. Tom looked up from his legal pad. Sandra smiled, and it was the kind of smile that meant a door was about to open. The offer came the following Monday. It was not the high end of the range Nathan had mentioned, but it was the middle of it, which was still 31% above what Brentwood paid, and the benefits package was full and detailed and included a dental plan that covered Zora, because Camille's status as a parent of one dependent was specified in the letter. She read the letter 3 times at the kitchen table. Then she read it a 4th time, just because. She gave Brentwood 2 weeks' notice. Gerald received the news with the polite surprise of a man who had not seen it coming, which was information in itself. She packed her desk in 20 minutes. There was not much there. A small plant she'd bought at a street fair in April, a photograph of Zora in her Halloween costume from the year before, dressed as an astronaut, a coffee mug she'd received for Secret Santa. She put them in a tote bag and said her goodbyes and walked out into a clear afternoon, the sky rinsed of everything. Her first day at Osei Logistics fell on a Monday in October. The office was on the 14th floor of the Hartley building, which had windows that overlooked the city from an angle she had never seen it from. She was not the kind of person who made much of views. She set up her workstation and introduced herself to the 3 people she'd be working closest with and attended the morning operations call that Sandra ran with the precision of someone who had been doing it for years and had decided long ago that it did not need to be longer than 22 minutes. She was good at the work. This did not surprise her. She had always been good at managing the complicated, at tracking the competing timelines, at being the calm voice when the calm voice was what the moment required. What surprised her, a little, was how much room the job left. Room to think. Room to plan. Room to take the 9:43 bus instead of the 6:42 and arrive at Zora's daycare at a time that did not require her to count the minutes from the bus stop. The work itself was denser than Brentwood in the ways she had hoped it would be. Sandra ran the operations calls precisely, and the problems that came up were real problems, not bureaucratic ones. A system failed and needed a workaround. A schedule collapsed and had to be rebuilt. A vendor was late, and the downstream effects had to be mapped and managed and communicated to 4 different parties in 3 different time zones. Camille was good at each of these things. She was also, and this was the thing she hadn't quite anticipated, interested in each of these things. Interested in the way you're interested in a problem that actually has stakes and whose solution actually changes something. She had not felt that in a long time. She started keeping a notebook. Not because Sandra asked her to, but because she had started to have ideas at night, small operational improvements, ways to reduce lag between incoming requests and response, a system for tracking vendor reliability across multiple projects. She wrote them in the notebook and brought 3 of them to Sandra in her 2nd week. Sandra read each one without expression. She approved 2 of them and modified the 3rd, which Camille had expected. After the meeting, Tom appeared in the doorway of her office and said, "She's never approved 2 in the same week from a new hire." "Was I not supposed to bring them yet?" Camille said. He smiled. "You were definitely supposed to bring them." She saw Nathan in passing 2 or 3 times in those first weeks. He stopped at her desk once, in early November, to ask how the transition was going. She told him honestly, which was what he seemed to want. "Sandra runs a tight ship," she said. "The tightest," he agreed. "I like it," she said. He nodded, unsurprised. "I thought you might." He started to move on and then turned back. "The umbrella," he said. "I left it with the front desk at the hotel in Columbus. I didn't know if there was a way to return it. I thought about it." She almost laughed. "It was $1.50. "Still," he said. "Keep it," she said. "Or don't. It leaks on the left side if the wind is wrong." He smiled, and then he was gone, back to whatever his day required of him, and she turned back to the operations schedule on her screen. She thought about what people do when they tell you something matters. The right response is usually just to let it matter. She was not someone who shrank from the weight of what had happened or tried to make it smaller than it was. She knew what the umbrella had cost her. She knew what the week had held and the account balance and the $4. She knew what it meant to give anyway. There are people who perform generosity for an audience, and there are people who give in the old, original sense of the word, which means giving when it actually takes something from you, giving when the math doesn't work out, giving in the 7 blocks of rain with a child waiting at the end of them. Camille had always been the second kind. She had not chosen it exactly. It was just the thing she was made of. That December, she moved. Not far, a different building on the same side of town, newer by 15 years, with an elevator that both worked and a radiator that did not sound like anything at all. The rent was $200 more a month, and she paid it. She paid the daycare on time. She paid the dental bill that came at the end of the year for Zora's first full cleaning, which cost her nothing above the copay, which had once been the kind of thing that made her lie awake at night doing arithmetic, and which she now paid and forgot about in the particular way you forget about things that are no longer a source of dread. Zora noticed the new apartment the way she noticed most things, carefully, systematically, by touching every surface once, and then never mentioning it again. She liked the window in her bedroom, which looked out over a parking lot, and beyond it, a slice of sky. She arranged her drawings on the windowsill, which was wide enough to hold them. She asked on the second morning whether the new place was theirs. "We live here," Camille said. "But is it ours?" "We're renting it. It's our home." Zora thought about this distinction for a moment. The old place was renting too. It was. "This one is better," Zora said, not as a complaint about the old one, just as an observation. She was 5 and she was precise about what she saw. That afternoon, they went grocery shopping together, which they always did on Sundays, but in a different store now, one that was 2 blocks closer and had a produce section with better light. Zora picked out an apple she said looked like a good apple and turned out to be right. They made dinner together, which they almost never had time for on a Sunday because the Brentwood schedule had made Sundays into days for recovery and preparation. Now there was a little room left over after the grocery run, and they used it to make soup, standing side by side in the kitchen, and Zora stirred the pot with a wooden spoon that was almost too long for her and took the job with full seriousness. She did not spill. She never fell. One evening in January, not long before Zora's 6th birthday, the two of them were at the kitchen table after dinner. Zora was drawing and Camille was going over the next month's budget, the new version of it, the one that had room in it now, and she looked up at her daughter and thought about the umbrella, about the way her hands had moved, about the man on the corner with the dead phone and the linen shirt gone translucent in the rain. She had not done it because she thought it would lead anywhere. She had not done it because she was calculating a return. She had done it the way you hold a door for someone you'll never see again, because you have what they need, and walking past would have been a choice she couldn't make. What came back was not luck. It was not a coincidence or a reward dispensed by a universe-keeping score. It was the simple consequence of one person looking at another person and seeing a person in the rain at the end of a hard day and making room. That matters too. Not every umbrella starts a story, but this one did, because of who gave it and how, and without looking back. Zora set down her blue crayon and picked up a yellow one. She was adding sun to something, a giraffe maybe, or a house, or whatever it was that needed more light. Camille watched her for a moment. Then she went back to the budget, and the numbers were good, and outside the window the city was doing what cities do in January, holding its breath under a pale grey sky, waiting for a warmth it hadn't quite earned yet. It was coming, though. She knew it was coming. If this story stayed with you, tell us in the comments what it brought up for you. And if you're looking for more stories about everyday people who give generously when no one is watching, the next one is waiting for you.